welcome back to the Exchange Art Artist Workshop series. Super excited to be joined by a Solana OG, someone who I feel like has just captured what the Solana community is through their artwork so well. Fede, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Hey man, so glad to be here. Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Absolutely. You know, when I think like of when I first started on Solana, I think of your art like immediately. You know, like you've done so many things, kind of immersing yourself with the people who were early on in the community, and I just love to see what's happened from that. But I want to go back to like where it started for you as an artist, because I think that often at Web3 that's not talked about a lot.
It's been quite a ride, even inside the Web3 space. It has happened so much in so little time. It's a hard question for me because I've been around arts most of my life. I remember when I was a child being like, I don't know, 5 years old and telling my grandparents, tell me a topic and I'll do either a drawing or a song for you and charge them like a quarter or something. So I've always been around arts. But prior to the NFT space, I've never been able to do it on a professional level or to like sell my work. I did started graphic design and architecture on separate parts of my life, so I have some kind of formation in it. But so there are like different levels to answer that question. I don't know if it's valid or not.
No, I think that's I think that like, you know, the inherent artistic ability always matters a lot. And then like once you learn how to like start making, you know, like, oh, it's like, oh, wow, I can use this, you know, and now there's tools for me to like actually make a living with what I'm good at and enjoy doing.
Yeah, I mean, this space definitely taught me how to pursue a career as an artist and some of the marketing aspects of being an artist. I think, and feel like I've been an artist all my life because once again, I've been doing art related stuff as far as I can remember. So I can confidently say that I am an artist now, and it's probably thanks to Web3. But I've been in that artistic pursuit all my life.
It's really interesting. I love hearing when like Web3 is like one of the things that unlocked that like next level. It's like, okay, I am an artist. Like, forget everything else. I am an artist. So I think that's really cool. When did you like first discover NFTs and like that you should like spend time like, oh, like, you know, there's something here?
It was quite wild. I remember my brother, Mills, for those who don't know, he's my brother, started showing me he was buying some early Solana NFTs back in June 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And at first, it sounded like something completely whack for me. I said, why are you spending large amounts of money on JPEGs that, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, which he was showing to me weren't even that good. I mean, but I didn't understand the drill. And when he told me this is about to blow up, you got to jump in right now, immediately, do whatever you want, but you can't miss this opportunity, which was back in July 2021. That's where I entered the space. I was super shy at that moment about both my artistic skills and what did I have to offer to the space. But I just did it like kind of a side gig, like an opportunity. Okay, maybe I can do like a couple $100 or whatever. All of a sudden, I was full-time working off this.
That's really cool. Like, I feel like I remember watching you, like I said in the beginning, like, I feel like I remember watching you enter this space and you kind of used like the communities that already existed. You started like using your art to speak to those communities. Talk to me a little bit about how you like thought about doing that.
As I said at the beginning, I was super shy and didn't thought I could give or have much to offer. I started doing, the first couple of memes I did were basketball gifs. Like I took a picture of an NBA player, cut it and do like a little animation or whatever. Then I realized people had like a more emotional level with with handmade stuff. So I started illustrating a couple of players, and then the dairy madness started. My brother commissioned a dairy from his SMB to, I don't remember if Pinag or El Topo, who is another Argentinian OG in Solana, and it just popped off. I mean, I had like, I don't know, 5 to 10 commissions every day. So
Wow.
it was, once again, with time I understood that I had to take care of the ecosystem and to really value what was going on. But at the beginning, it was like an opportunity to, like a little side gig doing something I found fun. So it was okay. People are asking me to draw monkeys, I'll draw monkeys. Then I got to collect my own monkeys and started loving the space and understanding the responsibility I had as one of the first artists in the space. But if I gotta be completely honest, at the beginning, that's how it started.
That's really cool. It's like like you do something for one person, like, it being your brother is irrelevant in this situation, to be honest. It's like you do something, they share it out, and then all of a sudden it's like more people are like, whoa, what is that? It's like, I want one of
Yeah,
those.
yeah, and I mean, at that time there wasn't much offer, and there weren't many artists around. So basically, every new thing that was kind of exciting worked really well, and everyone wanted a piece of that. So what it was, either hors d'oeuvres or someone that came up with a new language. I remember, for example, the first time I saw Krat, Krat Studio or Magnat, who brought to the mix things that I hadn't seen before. People went wild because, once again, there wasn't that much going on back then. So everything had like a huge possibility of being really successful.
That's really interesting. I think the ecosystem was so small back then. I think you're so right. Where did you like kind of figure out that, like, oh, like I want to do something now, like on my own, like create my own kind of world around my art?
Well, it was quite difficult for me stopping to be the Derek guy because that's why everyone knew me. So I realized that if I wanted to pursue a career as an artist, I had to like develop my language, my universe, my craft as well. Because at certain points, I realized that I really needed to step up if I wanted to keep up. If you see some of my early work, it was much more basic. I don't want to say it was bad or whatever, but I'm much more proud of what I do now than what I did a year ago. So it was only natural trying to step up to keep up with all the amazing artists that started to show in so many little time. But because, once again, me being an OG in comparison to others, it's maybe like a month or 2 month time. It's not like I've been grinding for years before the others.
It's funny, the timeline, right? It's like, oh wait, that was like 2 months. It felt like another year though.
For me, it's a completely new life. I'm not even kidding. It's 2 months that changed my life. You will imagine.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love those stories. Um, I'm curious on, like, like you started doing these derivs. I'm guessing you kind of like the communities that you were doing derivatives of, you were getting pretty involved with. I'm kind of curious on like how you view community in Web3, and also like how you got involved with these communities that you were doing these derivatives for.
Well, at the beginning, one scene wasn't even a thing. I mean, there were artists, but I don't think there was a scene. So basically, every artist was also flipping NFTs, or at least buying or holding or whatever. So both my experience as an artist and as a collector were very linked to the existing communities that were around, especially Solana Monkey Business and Fagbirds, which were like the biggest collections back then. And I think that being able to share that with people who were in the same situation as you or a similar situation as you was the only thing to understand that was real. I don't know, because all this madness was so abstract that I really couldn't share it with like my IRL friends or whatever. So you had to talk with other people that were in the same situation as you were. So that's pretty much how I feel I entered into Web3 communities. And nowadays, especially in the bear market, it's super important like to be able to once again stay in touch and talk to people who are in the same situation as you are, now that everything is not as fun as it were in the raging bull market we lived back then. So it's essential. I mean, with no community, probably there wouldn't be NFTs as they are now, at least.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot more boring. That's for sure, right? It's like, and you see that too. Like the projects that don't do well end up being the ones that aren't able to have anything more than people thinking about the dollar, thinking about the money that they spent. But in the good communities, you see like people being there for one another. And that's something that I remember pulled me to Solana originally as well. It's like going in to the Solana Monkey Business Discord when it was so early. Everyone's like so excited and figuring things out and like new mint. Oh no, I got rugged. Like guys, use burner wall. It's like all of these things happening in real time and everyone learning together. It was just like a really cool experience.
Yeah, I think that there were like several moments throughout this year and a half which I understood the value of community, and I understood it in different levels, if you may. Because, I mean, I had like the automatic answer of how important communities were and which projects were doing well and which weren't. And we all knew that a project needed supporters to be successful. But then I had that realization moment as an artist as well. I had already achieved some level of success, and without taking care of your community, you often like couldn't retain collectors or like basically stay in touch or be relevant at the same time. So at that level, I got like at that moment I got like a moment of understanding how important community was. And once again, when I started my project Fellas, which is what I spend most of my time now, I realized once again how important was to take care of my community and how art is just one part of the grind of an artist in this space. So it's super important.
Yeah, that's very well said. It's a perfect segue actually too, because I would love to talk a little bit about Fellows and everything that you have going on there. Let's start from the beginning. Like, where did Fellows come from? I think it's such a fun project, and I've heard you talk a little bit a few times now about the evolution of your art through the project as well. And I think that that's something really special. Like you're real time pushing your craft and your artistic abilities with the collection as it goes out.
Well, yeah, I mean, Fellas born in a moment in which I was between collections. I had achieved some level of success or notoriety. Is that a word?
Yep, got it.
With my BSKT collection, I was pretty happy that I was able like to step out of the way of being the Derek guy and finally doing some fine art thing, if you may. and I have done my electric relaxation series as well. I was like in a good moment, and I was like somewhat, don't want to say short of imagination, but I was in a spot in which I wasn't, I hadn't found which was the next thing, you know. But at the same time, I was in a personal, very good moment because I felt like I finally had like overcome all that feeling of not being good enough, or that I had to step up my game in order to keep growing. So I was confident on what I was able to do, but I wasn't very much inspired. So I thought it was like a good moment to revisit what has made me successful, if you may, which were derivs. And I knew that like most people still loved or love me for what I did back then. So I thought it would be really cool to make like an updated version of what I've done almost a year ago, making it more mine. Of course, I didn't want to make like a deriv collection, but that's basically how it born the idea of making monkeys a PFP collection, which I was very reluctant at the beginning because once again I was very aware that I was going to have to take care of the community and assume some responsibilities that I didn't want to back then. So yeah, I started doing that. I was quite shy at the beginning. Once again, I did like a batch of 5 at the beginning and showed them to a couple of people. I respected their opinion. I shared them in the 7 Swords group. I had a little conversation with Mamba as well, who worked as an advisor somehow. And yeah, so I dropped a batch of 5 at the beginning at a fixed price, not knowing what was going to happen, and they blew off. Basically, long story short, they blew off, and I started taking 5, dropping 5 every week, and they sold out in seconds. Well, the project started shaping up by itself.
Yeah, it's such a fun project too. I just love like the different bits of like either whether it's like pop culture or Solana culture. You can just tell that you like really pay attention to like these different like nuances that are all of us weirdos who are in this space, right? And I think they speak really well to that.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is to make 100 pieces, and if you're gonna make 100 monkeys, they had to be different from each other, right? It just can be like a small generative handmade collection. So I have a lot of fun on the character design side. I try to pick things that inspire me from my everyday world. Like, I don't know, you go out at night and you see someone who has an outfit that catches your imagination, your attention, or whatever. It may not be nothing special, but it's something that caught your attention, or from movies or from Solana culture as well, that it's a big part of my life. So it can come from anywhere, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's really important for me, like, to make them really distinctive. I feel like since they are all so different, there's a big opportunity that someone will feel very represented with one specifically. So yeah, I have a lot of fun with that.
I think it's important to have fun with it, right? It's like so often you can like start taking yourself so seriously, and especially you said like you had already had 2 collections of more of your fine art that have done pretty well. It was probably pretty nice to just go back to like, all right, I'm going to be silly. You know, it's like, I'm going to like have fun with this. And like, of course you have fun with all art, but like having fun with like the subject itself as well. And in the process of creating these.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's interesting because something I wanted to do at the same time as having fun is I wanted to see how further could I push a simple idea of making a monkey that at the beginning took me like, I don't know, 15 minutes. What happened if I put 3 hours into it or 4 hours into it? How much better could it be? So
Yep.
It was even at the beginning a fun experiment. Now I got my methods. I know how to do it. But at the beginning was even it was experimentation, even though if it was something I have already done in some way.
Yeah, it's interesting you say it like that. It's almost like you had a monkey-shaped canvas, and it's like, what can I do with this now? It's like if I spend more time, I think that it's really fun to think about creating in constraints, and I think oftentimes like with these handmade PFPs, they're like a really fun constraint to put yourself into.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I mean it's really interesting once again to see how much further can you push something. I mean, the first time you do it, you do something, it might take you certain amount of time, and when you find something with which you are pleased, it's natural that the following, I don't know, 2, 4, 5 pieces of that series, you will repeat that dynamic. So it's interesting to like refresh the dynamics every time you do it, or to try not to rest on some formula you found that it works, because at the end of the day, that's the way you keep pushing forward, not only the art but yourself.
I think you have such a fun style too. I was just pulling up your exchange art page, and it always comes across as almost like it's like you could really feel the hand drawn elements, but it almost feels like it was pencil and paper, or paper and marker. And I believe I'd heard you talk in the past that's really how it started off for you. But I would love to talk a little bit about like the process of creation for you.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, I started doing with pen and pencil, because pen and paper, and I took a picture with my iPhone, not even with a good camera. I like leveled the balanced the levels a little bit, and cleaned a little bit the image, and painted with Photoshop. For my birthday that year on 2021, I bought myself an iPad, and it changed my workflow completely. It opened a world of possibilities. At the beginning, it was quite hard because the adaptation is not that easy. But yeah, I do 99% of what I do now on iPad. I use Procreate on the pencil. And regards my workflow, I usually it's not that interesting. I mean, I do a sketch, then I do the outline, then I usually color. It happens from time to time that I get bored of like doing details, and I start coloring, and I go back to the details or something. But it's pretty much a linear process in which I sketch, outline, ink it, and then do some shadows. That's it.
I think that you've done a really great job of like, I think you mentioned this earlier, of creating your own digital language, and that goes all the way back to like your first pieces. It's like I still remember getting that Thugbirds piece, and like I remember the look of it, and since then, like there's something in your artwork that like kind of connects that, right, and that is like your digital voice through your artwork. I'm curious on how you kind of go about getting that to come across, right? It's like whether you're doing now digital on your iPad, or like you said, when it started off, but they come across very strong. Like it's a Fede piece.
Well, that was one of my concerns when I moved from analog to digital. I felt like one of the strengths of my work, or what people knew me for, was the sense of being like something analog or hand draw. So I was quite concerned about that, and that's why I choose not to use certain tools that the digital gives you. For example, I don't know, stability when you draw. You can do your own custom brushes on Procreate, and I chose not to stabilize all the way through because I needed that shakiness because it was part of my language. Or the paper feeling. I often use like overlays to recreate that paper sense. So yeah, I mean, one of the things that having studied graphic design gave me is like understanding like the different parts of a piece, which is the line, the color palette, or whatever. And like I try to stick with the ones that I felt like were working, especially all that. And then at the same time, as when the time went further and I went evolving on my craft, I adapted to certain things. For example, the Fede palette, if you may, that everyone recognizes, like the yellow, the greens, and whatever. It's something that has like maybe 6 months or a little more that I didn't have at the beginning, but it's something that I picked up in the way. At certain point, I realized that my color game wasn't that strong, or I didn't felt represented by that, and it was one of the things that most interested me when I was studying graphic design. So I took the time like to design my own color identity, and once it stuck, I stuck with it.
I think it really like it's such a signature thing. It comes across so well. You know, whether you're looking at Fellows or any of your other collections, it's like those signature colors really do add so much to like who you are as an artist. You know, I'm curious on like some of the inspirations that helped like lead you to that. You know, like was it people, other artists you were seeing in the space? Was it artists from the outside that you were admired? Like, I'm curious on that.
I suck with names. If I gotta be honest, I'd like to say, yeah, I saw a graphic designer from Italy in the 40s. That's not the case, but there's a lot of information going on all the time. Two of the things that I think that most inspired me are like gig posters, skateboarding gigs, and most of them, or not most, but many, or at least the ones that I got most interested with are have limited palettes in order like to be able to be screen printed. So I think that gives like a really pregnant language, and like the less colors you use, the more the more contrast you can get. So I think that's probably where that came from. Once again, I studied graphic design, so there were tools I had inside me, even though I couldn't mention what it is, but I don't know, it's something you train. Once it's there, it won't go away. So yeah, on the other side, there are lots of artists inside the space that inspired me. Like I said before, not only I wouldn't say like I got inspired specifically from go again. On the Web3 space, there are a lot of artists that inspire me, not like to develop my language, but as I said, like I saw that people that were doing amazing things started to pop up everywhere, and I needed to level up in order to stay at their level. And I don't want to name, like, for example, Sean Lay, who has a level I think I'll never achieve in his craft, but people that were doing things like, once again, Kratz or Magnat, or, well, James Johnson is another beast. I never draw like him, but there are so many artists that when they appeared were so inspiring for me that I gotta give them credit as well.
It's really cool. Like I feel like all of the OGs just kept pushing each other. You know, it's like, oh wow, did you see what so and so did? Like I gotta, like, you know, and it was all an unspoken thing, and it's all like totally amicable, but it's like, oh man, like this just pushes me to want to do better. And I think that that's such a driving force of like all this artistic growth we've seen on Solana.
It's crazy because, for example, sometimes, or I remember a time I wasn't very inspired. I was talking to my girlfriend, and she said, maybe you should look references like outside the NFT space. And it was like, yeah, maybe, but you wouldn't imagine the amount of art I see every day. Like, I mean, obviously there are a lot of cool stuff outside the space, but people from outside the space don't realize the amount of cool stuff there is inside the space. So yeah, it's really inspiring. I see lots of stuff I love every day in here.
You mentioned before, like, you know, like the need to like step it up on a community aspect when you started doing fellas. You're like, okay, like I knew this came with some responsibility. Uh, but like I kind of want to summarize both of them, I guess, with this next question. And that's like what would 3 tips for new artists that you would give for them trying to build a community around their artwork?
Okay. Well, one thing that's very important that I realized maybe a little bit late is like it's important to build your own community and to take care of the ones that are around you. But it's way easier to try to insert in a community that it's already running. What I mean is there are lots of communities that pay a lot of attention to art, like, for example, Masked Warriors or, well, Lucid Drakes or whatever, or even Monkey DAO, or that there are a lot of people willing to help and willing to pay attention to what you have to give if you are a part of that community. I know that there are lots of them that are really expensive to buy into, but I'm sure that there are a lot of small, cool communities that the buy-in isn't that inaccessible for someone that's new. So that's really, really important because it speeds everything quite a lot. Then once again, be very, very aware of the people that it's paying attention to you and why do they like you. And I'm not saying this should like change your way of creating, but if you have this information, you can act accordingly. So try to talk to collectors, try to ask them what's on your work that caught their attention. That should be true right now. And number 3, I'd say stay with your like try to pay attention to how the space shifts, because what happens now might not be what's happening in 2 months, and everything happens in a very silent way. So maybe your methods that you have and were working 2 months ago are not that good anymore. You gotta stay relevant.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Those are really great tips. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, hopefully, and the whole point of this is like, you know, it's like hopefully someone else who is just starting off or is curious about your journey can listen back in. But it's especially exciting for those who are listening in who are new. It's like, how did they get from like where they started off, where nothing was going on, to now, you know, through the success that they've had. So I thank you for that so much, man.
Nah.
I kind of want to shift things back towards like what's next, right? Because I think that you have some very established collections. You have obviously Fellas, which is going to be something that even after the 100, I think is still going to have just an amazing community around it. But I want to know, like, where do you want to push yourself next artistically?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, nowadays, Fellas took most of my time. So I have like much less creative energy to give from before I started the collection. Something I'd be really interested in is trying to go back to analog methods and to try to give myself a IRL experience. I love to be able to be displayed in galleries like non-NFT galleries, but that's just something for myself because I owe this to myself because my career was like the other way around in comparison to most artists. I'm really eager to prove myself once again on a more fine arts collection, something more BSKT related. And I really love to experiment with objects as well. Either I don't know if sculpting, but I'm not sure if this ever gonna happen. But I'd love to do, like, for example, installations or experiences or something that it's not only 2D.
Yep.
We'll have to wait and see when and how that happens, but that are the things that got me most excited now.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. I think it's such a unique perspective you have answering that question, because you have like really found yourself as an artist in the NFT Web3 space.
Yeah, it's crazy. I say this quite often. It was quite a challenging journey for me because I found success, if you may, before being comfortable with my own craft. So I had like to discover my artistic journey while keeping up with my career and with the demand that had, and that usually is the other way around. So emotionally, it was quite hard for me, like discovering myself while trying to pretend I'm a successful artist. So yeah, I there are a lot of things and a lot of steps I owe to myself. Hopefully it will happen. I mean, this all happened in a year and a half. I have the rest of my life ahead, so it's exciting.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, man. Like you unlocked a door that cannot be closed. You know, it's like, oh, you know, it's like I'm an artist now. So like, you know, here I come.
Yeah.
Here I come, world.
Yeah.
I have like what would like some recommendations be from your experience improving your craft in the Web3 space to like keep up with what, you know, this perceived success, right? It's like, what advice would you give to someone who's trying to like match that, right? It's like maybe they're a kind of a newer artist, but it's all of a sudden getting a lot of success. Like, you know, how do you tell someone to like think about improving their art also, and also like, you know, matching their own mental expectations, right?
I think that's very personal. I mean, where do you put the bar on? Well, okay, now I'm comfortable with what I'm doing is so personal that it's really hard to give advice. I think that there are a lot of things that take you to like being successful, and there are a lot of things that you can do besides improving your craft to take you there. Something that was very important for me because at the same time, when I started back then, things weren't that way. It's something that I had to learn in the process, is perceiving how you display yourself in order to how people perceive you. What I mean with this is, for example, exchange art was the marketplace that led things to being seen as fine arts and artists to be displayed as artists. That means like ordering your work into collections, talking about supply, and talking about like how to take your career to the next level. And I think that kind of stuff, it's really important to pay attention to, and that are the kind of things that also help you take your career to the next level, to like be better, like to improve your craft per se, just like, I don't know, spending hours in it, watching references, staying long hours drawing or whatever. I mean, studying basically. But there's much more than making your art better to be a better artist, you know. I don't know if that answers the question, but
No, I think that answered it really beautifully. It's you're right. It is such a personal question, but I think that's like a nice, like broad, like this will get you going at least in the right direction. I want to take things even more broad than that, though.
okay.
As we're winding down here, and again, I just like super appreciate this conversation. But as a Solana OG, I gotta ask, like, where do you see the future of art on Solana and the future of Solana in general? With all that's happened in the last year, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's been just an amazing. It's been an amazing experience to watch. Like the growth that we've had. Also, of course, the bad, but then the way that the communities come together. So I'm just curious on like your opinions on what the future looks like from someone who's been here as well.
Well, I mean, I want to do a disclaimer. I know nothing about finance or even tech. So this is definitely not financial advice or whatever. But what I feel is like especially after Breakpoint and seeing how tight community is, I'm absolutely sure that Solana will stick around. I think that there's still a little more time ahead for non-Web3 people understand that NFTs are or can be fine arts as well. So I feel like that there's no roof here. I mean, we have like quite a more or less established art scene right now. It's just a matter of time for it to be like mainstream or like to onboard more people. So I think it's only up from here. No, I don't want to say like on a financial way, but I feel like foundations are already there. The people show that we are here to stay. So I only see up in the future. I don't know how far away that future is right now, but that's the way I feel.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. I think the last year has been such a good example of that, right? It's like, who would have thought when you started out that the scene would be what it is now? And, that might have been with a Solana price that's higher than it is right now. But the way that the community has grown, the way that the art side of things has grown, I would have never expected it,
I mean, it would have been very easy for all of us to say when the things were going up. The fun fact is how much the space developed during the bear market. So that's made me ultra bullish. And once again, even though I already felt that way, seeing it on person on Breakpoint, I got absolutely no doubts that we are here to stay.
I couldn't agree more, man. And dude, you're definitely here to stay. Like, when I think Solana community, there is like a handful of artists that I really just am like, okay, like this is an artist that's on Solana. It's like I said, all the way back to like the derivative work, your first collections, like all of it is, I feel like, just a staple of the art movement in so many ways. And I just appreciate you for sticking it out, for putting out artwork and putting yourself out there when there was not many. I think that because of people like you, others are now comfortable putting out their artwork, right? And we've done a lot of growing together, both exchange and alongside of artists like yourself. So just thank you for doing this with us today.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, I feel like my work is so rooted in Solana, and it's really a part of the culture. I'm not saying that my work is part of the culture, but the Solana culture is a part of my work. So I guess I wouldn't be able to be somewhere else. Once again, I feel a responsibility for how people, I shouldn't be saying this, but I mean, being an OG in the space builds an image around you, and people, I don't want to say that they rely on me, but they see me, or at least some of them see me as part of the culture. And once again, I feel like I have to take care of our space. It changed so many lives and it gave so many opportunities that I feel like my place in here is taking care of it and doing my thing and rooting for the good of all of us.
That's beautiful. All right. I think that we are at the end here, but that was really amazing, man. I appreciate you taking the time and doing this with us today.
I really wanted to do it. I saw all your interviews and I was, when will be my turn?
I'm excited to just I'm like excited to listen back to the catalog after so many of these have been done. I think we maybe have recorded close to 10 now, and it's just like each time you learn so much more about the artist and just like the stuff that you don't get on Twitter, and even in Twitter Spaces, you don't get like as deep, I feel like.
No, absolutely. And when you send me the list of questions, I found them very interesting. I've done quite a few like Twitter Spaces interviews or whatever. Usually the questions are more or less the same. So when I saw something, most of them were related to the topics I usually speak about, but were different questions, and it was quite refreshing. So it gets you thinking as well. So
that comes from also asking a lot of questions on Twitter Spaces. So it's like, how do I make this different than what we do there?
Yeah, it was a real pleasure. Not just saying that because
Mills pays you to say that. I know it.
He better pay me.
He bribed you. Yeah, he better pay me.